Thank you so much. Gracias. Buenos días a todos. I'm Karen and I'm speaking with you live from Tel Aviv. So excited to be a part of 8.8 Leyenda Sandbox. It is a truly legendary event with the people that you have lined up, with the content that you have going on. It's really remarkable. I'm so happy to be a part of this event. Thank you for sharing your time with me, your morning with me. Here it's afternoon in beautiful sunny Tel Aviv, and I'm just so excited to be with you today. So I'm going to share with you my presentation, and I want to invite you to take this keynote as an opportunity to join me on a journey. I'm not just going to talk about cybersecurity challenges. What I want to do today in this talk is actually focus on the future of cybersecurity. So this is what I would like to do today. Hopefully you can see my slides in your screen, and we'll give it a moment to make sure that everything is working. But what is really important for me is to share with you in this moment is the challenges that we are faced with. They're not just about COVID-19. They're about so many changes that are happening in our lives, in our digital universe. And it's also about how we make choices right now that will influence the future for everybody. So I hope you enjoy this journey to the future of cybersecurity, a journey where we will talk about building our digital immune system. And as you heard earlier from Gabrielle, I am a hacker, and I've always been so proud to call myself a hacker. I never thought that it's a criminal term or a bad term. I was growing up here in Tel Aviv, and until the late 90s, we didn't actually have a computer crime law. So the concept of hacking was always about curiosity to me. It wasn't about being a criminal. And today, I want to share with you what is the hacker perspective, what is the hacker point of view about the future that we're dealing with, about this future that is just, happening right now and all the changes that are happening with it. So the hacker's perspective is going to be a big part of this. Now, as I mentioned, I was a very curious little girl, and I grew up here in sunny Tel Aviv, and I spent a lot of my time in the school library and on the school's computer lab. So I was very lucky, I think, in the 90s that we had a computer lab in my school. But in 1993, we first got the internet in Israel. And when we first got access to the internet, I heard about it somewhere, and I just begged my parents, can I please have my own computer with an internet connection at home? I had to have it. It was a must for me. And I'm very lucky, I guess, that my parents allowed it. And if you remember the 90s, we had to connect with a dial-up modem. So it also meant that nobody could make any phone calls while I was surfing the internet. And of course, after a few months, I convinced them to also give me my own phone line so that I could be connected all the time. Just imagine, today we don't have to worry about these things anymore. But when I was growing up, this world of digital opportunities was so incredible to me. It was just filled with excitement and experiences. But I had to teach myself everything, not just how to connect, but also while I was connected, what do I do? Where do I go? And I found myself in IRC forums, and I found myself talking to other curious kids like me from all over the world. And before I knew it, those kids were teaching me how to use the language of the internet, HTML or PHP or whatever it was, the language, the code of websites, how to use it to get anywhere that I wanted, to find answers to all of my questions. So it was in the early 90s that I made my first experiments as a hacker. And I will never forget the excitement of those first moments. I will never forget it. It changed my life. But there was something even bigger that changed my life, and it happened in 1995. I met my first hacker mentor. And this hacker mentor, you might be familiar with her. Her name, Angelina Jolie. And Angelina Jolie portrayed the fierce acid burn in the Hollywood classic movie Hackers. I don't know if you've seen that movie or not. For me, it was a major, major inspiration for choosing a life and a career in the field of cybersecurity. And in fact, when I saw the movie, I realized for the first time that the things I was doing, it was called being a hacker, and that actually you can be a hacker hero, that you have that possibility of being a hacker hero. And the kids in the movie, they were also really alternative. They had their choices, they had their way. They were the ones who, at the end of the day, were the good guys. They were the ones who prevented an ecological catastrophe. If you remember the plot of the movie, they actually dealt with one of the first cases of ransomware, if you think about it. Of course, it was in fiction, but the things they did 25 years ago are now more realistic than ever. So it was this group of hacker weirdos and high school kids that I really saw my ideal. And I decided to model my entire life, my entire career after these people and the hacker mindset, the hacker perspective. Now, these are just a few of the organizations that I've worked with since then. For 25 years, I've had a long-ranging cybersecurity career. I served in the Israeli Military Information Security Department. I worked with different technology companies and security companies. And in the past 5 years, I'm an academic researcher here in Israel at Tel Aviv University's Cyber Research Center. So these are just some of my affiliations. But throughout all of my different positions, I've always thought about the community, not just the industry or the academic side of things, but also the community. That is why I am the founder of two nonprofit organizations here in Israel. One is called the B-Sides Tel Aviv Conference. It's part of the global network of B-Sides event. And the other organization is the Leading Cyber Ladies Network for Women in Cybersecurity. And if you are a woman in cybersecurity and you are curious about meeting other ladies, you're welcome to find us online, leadingcyberladies.com. We started in Israel, but we actually have chapters and branches in the US, in Toronto, in Europe, and maybe soon in Chile and Latin America. Who knows? It's up to you. So I've always had this big passion for the hacker community. And this is why I'm so happy to be a part of this event, because it's not just about the industry, it's also about the community. And in 2014, when I had my opportunity to present at the International TED Conference, I chose that moment to share the message that hackers are not the enemies, not always. Hackers can actually represent the internet's immune system. They can actually help us. They can build an immune system for our new connected reality. And today, I think we need to build that digital immune system. We need a digital immune system more than ever before, because we're dealing with different types of threats to our life, to our digital life and our physical life. Of course, with COVID-19, with the new coronavirus, our life has changed, and the changes that are happening are going to stay. Even after we find a vaccine, even after we banish this virus, we are dealing with a new type of digital ecosystem, a new type of digital life. So we need an immune system for this new reality. And in the past 9 months, I spent a lot of my time researching what criminal groups have been doing, what nation state attackers have been doing. And I can tell you that they've not been taking a holiday. Far from it. Attackers have evolved. They have changed the way they do things. They have come up with different models, different techniques, different methods. So it's actually up to us to evolve as well. We have to respond as security professionals, as passionate, friendly hackers, as the community. We have to step up to the challenge. We have to evolve as well. And I want to talk a little bit, I'm sure you've seen these headlines about how cyber criminal groups and state-sponsored groups are ramping up their attacks, they're using COVID-19. I want to show some specific examples of this, not just stay with the headlines. And of course, we all know that because of work from home, that people are at more risk because they're using digital systems. I want to talk about that as well. So today in this journey, we're going to talk a little bit about what attackers are doing, and we're going to talk about the trends, the technologies, and the changes that are happening to us working from home, and how that's going to, look like in the years to come, even after COVID-19. So this is really going to be a little bit of a deep dive into some of these issues, some of these ideas, from the hacker perspective. So I'll take a look at some of the technical attacks, the new capabilities that attackers are developing, and I'll talk about what are the changes that are happening to us in our lives, in everything that we're doing with these technology trends. So I want to go, the first segment here I want to talk about is malicious innovation. And when I talk about malicious innovation, I'm referencing how innovative and creative cyber criminals have become. And they actually invest a lot of time and attention and money and resources in innovation, in redeveloping their tools, in building new capabilities. And that innovation, as I will show you in a few moments, can have different forms. Sometimes it's a new business model, sometimes it's a new feature, sometimes it's building on an existing capability, existing security tool or vulnerability, and changing it completely. So innovation has many faces, and the criminals out there have their way with malicious innovation. So let's start maybe with the first example, Emotet. If you've never heard about Emotet, it's time you get to know it, because Emotet is probably the most successful brand of malware right now. And when I say successful, I mean in terms of how many emails that include downloads for Emotet there are out there, how many people are getting infected with it, and according to estimates, how much money the people behind Emotet are making. So it's a very, very successful brand. It's successful because it's very innovative. They are changing what they do all the time. Some analysts have recently discussed that Emotet is on the rise, that it's spiking in France, in Japan, in New Zealand, in different parts of the world. But why is that happening? I want to show you some examples to that innovation. So here is an Emotet infection vector. It's a Word document, Microsoft Office Word document. And what you're seeing in the document is, of course, that the macros have been disabled, because that's part of the Microsoft security features, to disable macros. And you have a button there that asks you to enable content. But you know that there's a big security warning next to it, and you shouldn't enable content. What the criminals did is they actually featured their own warning inside. And they're actually saying this document is protected. You have to enable editing because if you want to view it. So they're actually using the security warning, and they are subverting it. They are reversing what it means. So they're really confusing people by using the security warning and including one of their own security warnings. But this is just a simple example. Let's jump on to the next example. Now what I am sharing with you are 8 different emails, including Emotet infections. And here you can see that the emails, they are in different languages. They have different file types. It's not just Office, it's also rich text, RTF. There's also Mac variations. There's different things that are happening in terms of the file types. The content, the name of the file, the title, and the language is all extremely localized. So Emotet is successful because they invest in localization. They create a platform that allows them to come up with these variations, these different variations on the topics and the language that fit different markets. And I'm sure there is Spanish there somewhere, but it's also Italian, Swedish, even dialects of Hindi. So it's very global in their mindset. That's another aspect of their innovation. And now I want to talk about what is maybe one of their scariest forms of innovations recently, and that is the addition of a Wi-Fi spreading capability. So this is a bit of new research. It was done by Binary Defense, a security analysis company. And according to Binary Defense, they found a variant of Emotet, a very special variant of Emotet that can use one infection. So there's one computer that's an infected victim, and through the Wi-Fi connections that are available to that infected machine, Emotet can actually spread to other networks and computers. And it actually includes a brute force capability for the Wi-Fi passwords. And it even has a list of commonly used Wi-Fi passwords. But just imagine that means that one device that is infected with Emotet can lead to dozens or hundreds of infections. And this is similar to what we experience with COVID-19, where one infected person can lead to an entire pandemic. So it's another reference to why we need to build an immune system to protect against these types of attacks. Now, I wanted to also share this story about Emotet because Emotet is actually seldom alone. It's usually not by itself. It's actually part of a threesome, as some researchers have called it, or a trifecta, which is perhaps a more clean term. And this is a trifecta that includes a loader, a banker, and ransomware. So in a lot of cases, we are seeing an Emotet infection that then leads to a TrickBot banking Trojan infection, and then to ransomware Ryuk infection. Ryuk is a very nefarious ransomware variant that's very powerful these days. So Emotet actually brings its own friends with it, and it's just the first step. Usually it's the loader or the first stage in the attack. And there have been variations of Emotet that actually use PowerShell to hide on the operating system so that the commands for downloading additional payload, additional malicious payload are not seen by traditional security tools. A lot of people don't notice PowerShell and PowerShell scripts when they're running on the computer, and they actually can be used by malware. So I mentioned Ryuk. It's worth bringing up that Ryuk is actually on the rise these days. In a recent report I read by SonicWall, Ryuk is actually spiking. It's on the rise, and you might have heard about Ryuk. I'm not sure if you have it or have experienced it in Latin America, but in the United States, Ryuk recently hit a chain of hospitals. This is a chain of hospitals called UHS. They're actually quite a big chain of hospitals. They have about 400 hospitals across the United States and in the United Kingdom. And when Ryuk hit these hospitals, there was a $15 million ransom demand. Now, the reason this is happening is because criminals know how critical hospitals are right now because of the pandemic. So they are guessing that they have a much higher chance of getting paid, getting that ransom payment that they want to get. So it's really showing you how ruthless they are in responding to what's happening right now. Now, the rumors about the Ryuk hit at UHS started first on Reddit, and later on it was confirmed by several internet websites. And a lot of people were quite scared because they didn't have phones working or digital medical records working. And in some of the hospitals, they had to go back to, using pen and paper and offline backups in order to give service to their patients, their clients who are actually medical patients. Now, I want to share one piece of advice about Ryuk. It's actually meant to be very scary. So I don't know how many of you are fans of Japanese anime, but Ryuk is actually a character in a Japanese anime called Death Note, and he is the character of the god of death. So it's a very, very spooky piece of ransomware, very fitting now for Halloween around the corner, but it's actually quite serious. It's a very, very scary ransomware, and usually it's not alone. So if there is a Ryuk infection, it means that there was Emotet or TrickBot probably before that as part of the chain. Now, what we are experiencing right now is that attacks are not just in the US, they're not just in hospitals, they're also targeting factories and production facilities. So what you're seeing here is a Tesla factory outside Reno, Nevada. It's actually the Tesla Gigafactory. They're making, they don't make cars, they make batteries, important batteries for their cars and other electrical needs. And a criminal actually traveled on an airplane during the height of Corona from Russia to Nevada to meet with an employee that works in this facility, because they actually offered them $1 million to introduce ransomware into the network. Just imagine $1 million to knowingly introduce ransomware into the factory network. Now, it turns out that employee didn't agree to the payment. What they did actually is involve the FBI, and they created a sting operation to arrest the criminal. And when the criminal was arrested, it turns out that there was a good reason that they asked for $1 million, because they were hoping they would get up to $10 million from the ransom. In fact, the same criminal, according to the United States Department of Justice indictment emails, that's the official legal documents, the same criminal is actually part of the criminal group that recently also hacked an American travel technology company called CWT, or Carlson Wagonlit Travel. Now, if you heard about this case, it was a $4.5 million ransom in Bitcoin, of course. And what's even more remarkable, in that case, they got away with it, and we can see the conversation. So the attackers, the criminals, were conversing on an online forum with their victims. So here, hopefully on your screen, you can see the chat where the victim is reaching out to the criminals, and they're saying, you promised us a very special price if we reached out to you within 2 days. There's no way that $10 million is a special price. And the criminals are responding, yes, okay, that's not a special price. We can give you a discount, but this is the amount of money that a company of your size will pay. And it's probably going to be cheaper than paying for lawsuits or damages or reputational loss if we leak your files caused by leakage. That's what they say. If we leak your files, you're going to pay more for it. So what's happening here is that the criminals are really upping the ante. It's the new stage in the evolution of ransomware. It's the combination of the extortion, the threat of leaking. And in fact, the first company or the first group that did this actually is the criminal group behind the Maze ransomware. Maybe you heard about them. And Maze ransomware has been doing this for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And they were the first who started with this trend of threatening to leak documents. In fact, they created a website for their leaks. And what you're seeing here is their website where they are claiming these are the companies that did not cooperate with us and they're trying to hide our successful attacks. We are going to publish their databases, their private papers here, follow our news. So we don't really see press releases from cyber criminal groups, but with Maze, that's what we're seeing. And it's really remarkable. This is another example. When they first did this, they leaked the information of their targets, a company called Allied Universal, when the company didn't meet the deadline for payment. So they gave out a 700 megabyte snippet of data to a newspaper, to a journalist, just to showcase that they really mean what they're saying. They really follow through on their threats. So these are the types of criminals that we're dealing with today. They're very future forward. They're very future oriented. They're coming up with new business models. They're using our data and the company's data against the companies. It's what I call a criminal renaissance. And it's difficult to talk about a renaissance where so many of us have our lives, disrupted by the virus. But for the criminals, it's a time of reinvention. It's a renaissance, really. And I don't use that term lightly. I understand that for a lot of people, life has been very hard. For criminals, life has been very exciting in the past year. And in the meantime, our lives has changed. So we have introduced into our lives more digital devices. I know that right now I'm surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different digital devices just in this room. I'm sure you have many devices with you as well. And it's just remarkable because it's an expanding digital universe that we live in, and it's expanding fast every day, more and more. In fact, I don't know if you've seen this graphic, but a few years ago, the Munich Security Conference, together with Gartner, estimated that in this year, in 2020, we're going to see about 3 times more digital devices than human beings on planet Earth. That was their estimate for 2020. But of course, these are pre-COVID estimations. This is a pre-COVID number. The current estimates talk about 75 billion devices by the year 2025. So that's absolutely remarkable. We are going to be a planet of the machines, not going to be planet of the humans. And all of these devices are part of what makes it possible for attackers to find us, of course. So if you want to find some of these devices, you can look them up on Shodan. I imagine some of you are familiar with Shodan, but those who are not, Shodan is an incredible search engine that is meant just for connected devices. And there are things like webcams and routers and maybe even power plants or wind turbines. Lots of different things are connected online and are visible. They could be found through Shodan. Now, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I saw that a clever hacker built a tool, a capability on top of Shodan. So what they did is actually combine Shodan with Metasploit. Some of you, I imagine, are familiar with Metasploit. For those who don't know it, it's a security testing framework. It includes a repository or a library of a lot of well-known exploits or attacks against specific vulnerabilities. And these could be vulnerabilities in an office printing machine or a computer or a piece of IoT gadget, a home camera, for example. Now, what this clever hacker did, they actually created something called Autosploit. So Autosploit is the combination of Shodan and Metasploit. And it's actually an automatic tool that allows the scanning of many targets using Shodan, and then the targeting and weaponization using the exploits in Metasploit. And it's, of course, open source. It's all on GitHub, and it's very easy to learn how to use. Now, the person who created this, I reached out to them online, and they say this is a tool for security evaluation, tool for security testing. It's not meant for malicious purposes. But there is nothing to stop cyber criminals from using it, and they have been using it as well. If it's open source, anybody can create their own version of it as well and maybe add changes. And I know that there are a lot of versions. There's already, I think, Autosploit version 4 is already out there. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a tool that you might want to play with, learn about, but do it safely, of course. It's just one example for the ecosystem, not just of malware, actually, but a vast ecosystem of attack tools and techniques that is now, available for attackers of all kinds. So you don't have to be a nation state attacker. You don't have to be, a mega elite APT, advanced persistent threat group or whatever. You can actually be part of the global ecosystem. So even if you're not a shadow broker, you have access to the shadow brokers tools. If you remember the shadow brokers, they were the group who was behind the leak of the NSA, the American National Security Agency exploits like, for example, Eternal Blue, which was perhaps the most famous exploit as it was used with WannaCry and NotPetya and several other attacks. So it's incredible that one hacking group leaked the information of the world's most sophisticated espionage agency. And today, attackers can still use those exploits, and they do. They still build capabilities on top of Eternal Blue. So a criminal doesn't have to have connections to Russia or China or the United States to have access to these types of tools and capabilities. They're all out there. And in fact, it's not just about Eternal Blue, of course, it's also other capabilities. For example, Mimikatz, which is a tool that's been around for, I think, almost 10 years now, or at least a couple of years. And Mimikatz is a tool for identifying passwords within Windows environments. So with Mimikatz, you can easily harvest credentials, and you don't have to use it yourself. It can actually be automated. So I believe it was NotPetya that actually used Mimikatz to also spread within networks by finding passwords and then logging into other machines and infecting them as well. But it wasn't created by criminals or by the NSA. Mimikatz was created by a friendly hacker, a security researcher from France. He was actually a guest of Microsoft here in Tel Aviv just a couple of years ago, and I got to meet him. So the tools that we create as security professionals can also be used by the bad guys. And that's part of the responsibility that we have to assume today as we think about that digital immune system. And of course, I mentioned PowerShell earlier, but it bears repeating. Attackers can also use things that are just part of the operating system. It's not a malicious tool. It's not a security testing tool. It's simply part of the operating system that goes by unnoticed, and criminals have learned how to use that. So they have this incredible ecosystem of things that they can build on, that they can use. They have all of these capabilities available for them. Now, some of you might remember Hacking Team, that was an Italian group that was selling advanced surveillance capabilities and hacking capabilities to governments. Now, you're saying, okay, Karen, this is ancient news. Why you bring them up? Because although they were hacked 5 years ago and their arsenal was leaked, just a few months ago, researchers found that one of their capabilities is now being used, 5 years later, is now being used by another apparently state-sponsored attacking group. And this state-sponsored attacking group is actually, some people have called it Mosaic Regressor, is actually using that capability that they got from the Hacking Team leaks to build a UEFI firmware persistent capability. So UEFI or UEFI, it's, I hope I'm getting the acronym right, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, is what allows them to maintain spyware on a computer even after it's rebooted, even after you swipe, you bring out the hard drive, you put in a different hard drive. By using the UEFI firmware, they can actually maintain persistency. So even something that was leaked 5 years ago is actually still being used today. It's absolutely remarkable. And another capability that's been revamped recently, it's XMRig. Some of you have heard about coin mining and crypto miners, maybe CoinHive, you heard about that. CoinHive was really popular 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Today, the idea of using botnets to mine for cryptocurrencies has shifted into the Monero world. XMR, it's short for Monero. It's an alternative digital currency. And XMRig, as of October 2020, as of this year, according to a report I read, has accounted for about 30 million cases of cryptojacking. So on this planet, there are 30 million computers that are being used by XMRig to generate Monero for the attackers that are behind them. Just think about that. It's like a parasite, really. So it's part of our ecosystem, and we have to deal with these attacks as well. So attackers are living off the land. They're with us. They're using whatever capability they can. They're using whatever computers they can. Meanwhile, let's talk about our lives, what we are doing. Well, our life has become more digital than ever before. We rely on digital technology. We rely on it for the energy systems, for the healthcare systems. We rely on it, of course, now for our daily grocery shopping, just making sure that there is food on the shelves. And of course, we rely on it now to see what's going on with our politics, whether it's in Latin America, in Chile, here in Israel, or in the United States. Digital technology is all around us, and that technology powers our future. And that means that cybersecurity is not about just protecting our credit card numbers or protecting our secrets when we converse with people online. It means that cybersecurity is about protecting all of these different digital things. It's about protecting our way of life, a very digital way of life, a very connected way of life. And it's about the trust that people place in that digital ecosystem. If people stop trusting it, then we're no good as security professionals. That's what we have to strive for. That's our goal. So where do we take it from here? How do we go from here with this difficult, burden on our shoulders? Well, there's only one place we can start, and that's home. It's where you are, it's where I am, it's where we're going to spend a lot of time, and the people that depend on us are going to spend a lot of time at home. It's the new office, certainly, but it's also the new conference center, it's the new yoga studio, it's the new school. Home is now everything. And at home, we've all gotten really used to using digital collaboration tools. We've gotten really comfortable, like I'm using this tool right now to speak with you live. But attackers are using that against us as well. So even at home, we have to be very mindful of how they use tools like, for example, Zoom or Skype or WebEx. Here's an example of a fake WebEx activation email or update email. And what they're doing here, the attackers are actually saying, watch out, there's a security update. You have to download a new version of WebEx. Just click on this. We recommend that you update this version. Just click on this link. Now, if you look at that link, it might look a little bit funny. It might look a little bit weird. It's HXXPS, not HTTPS. However, it's actually extremely similar to the original legitimate email. So when a company creates a link that looks like this, and then the malicious one looks like this, it's almost impossible to tell the difference. As you can see, the red one is the malicious one, the blue one is the legitimate one. It's almost impossible to tell the difference, really. And this is a Zoom activation email. Again, it looks very legitimate. It has the address of Zoom here below. It looks extremely, extremely legitimate. It's hard even for security professionals. Now, why are hackers doing this? Why are criminals doing it? Not just to get people to install things, they're actually using the Zoom credentials themselves as a commodity. So they're using the Zoom links and the Zoom credentials, the passwords, or even WebEx links as something that's worth money for them, and they're swapping them in underground markets. And absolutely remarkable innovation as well. So, sometimes it feels like we're at home with all of these devices and we don't have a lot of other people to keep us company other than our devices. But these are the devices that we went into the pandemic with, the digital devices that we have at home. And many of us share these devices as well. It's kind of hard to tell when we're using something for personal use, when we're using something for professional use. Maybe you have kids who share these devices with you. In a recent survey by CyberArk, they spoke to people about the new work from anywhere environment, and about 70% of people use insecure, unmanaged personal devices for corporate systems. And nearly all of them have recycled their passwords across different applications and services. 30% of people admit that they let their children and family members use their professional devices for personal uses like entertainment and education. So really, this is the new world of work. It's hybrid. We're using different devices, different services. It's no longer just a personal device versus a professional device, just a clear line between the two. It's not just the perimeter is gone. There is no differentiation anymore between the private use and the public use. So this is what I like to call the new hybrid world. Now, today we all talk about hygiene. Right? We don't shake hands, we maintain social distancing, we wear our mask. Why aren't we talking about the hygiene of sharing of all of these devices and digital services? Why aren't we talking about the hygiene of recycling passwords, for example? I think it makes sense to talk about hygiene in this context as well. And now I'm going to take a little break just for a moment, just to have some water, because it's getting hot here. All of these studio lighting that I have next to me are making it very warm here in Tel Aviv. I hope you're enjoying nice weather in Chile as well, in Santiago, or wherever you are in the world. So wherever you are in the world, wherever we are connecting to a new normal, and there's no walls, there's no perimeter, there's no firewalls that are protecting us anymore. And if there are, they need to adapt to a new normal as well. Of course, with people using cloud more than ever, the people that are now getting used to working from home, to using the cloud, are not going to go back. We're not going to go back to the BC, before Corona times. We're only going to do more and more of these digital collaborations. And even after we get a vaccine, even after we go back into the world. Now, this is an infographic I always like to share because it's about the incredible amounts of data that we consume and that we generate every day, every minute. From when I started talking to you until now, there have been thousands, millions of Instagram stories shared, Zoom minutes, Microsoft Team connections, even Amazon shipped products, Instagram added more users. Everything is just every minute we're generating more data, more connections, and that's going to be our digital reality. We're not going to go back. So how do we take these things in some perspective? Okay. I talked about the connectivity. I talked about the devices. It's a very data-centric society that we live in right now. We generate a lot of data. We collect a lot of data. And companies are going to continue collecting more and more data all the time. At the same time, we are also entering a hybrid, distributed world of work. So as security professionals, what do? Right? Now what? It can seem like super overwhelming. It's a really complicated world. Well, this is where I think the immune system comes into play. This is where I believe we need to put on, again, our hacker mindset, our friendly hacker mindset, and really embrace the power of a global community, because you are over there, I imagine, hundreds or thousands of people. And here in Israel, we have thousands of people all over the world. There are thousands of friendly hackers that can actually be a part of the solution, can actually be a part of a digital immune system. And I want to show you some examples of how hackers have been helping out. One of the things I am most passionate about is the idea of bug bounty programs. I'm sure you heard about it before, but if you're first hearing about it for the first time, bug bounty programs are mechanisms that allow companies to actively invite and engage friendly hackers from all over the world in identifying vulnerabilities and reporting problems. Now, when the pandemic began, a lot of us found ourselves at home. So unsurprisingly, actually, on some bug bounty programs, there was a spike in how many hackers were actually using their time to find vulnerabilities, to stay at home and help businesses identify vulnerabilities. These are just some of the companies and businesses that have successful bug bounty programs. And they're not just technology companies. They're also retail brands, airlines, financial organizations, and of course, car companies. So I mentioned Tesla earlier. I think it's only fair I talk about them again, this time in a more positive light. So this is the Tesla Model S. That's their flagship product. And they actually brought it for the first time to DEF CON, the world's largest hacking convention, of course, several years ago. I think back in 2014 or 2013 when they just launched the product. So when they just launched the product, they bring it to the world's largest convention of hackers. If you've never been to DEF CON, I hope you get to experience it. I hope I get to experience it in person, but I think that's where I first met Gabrielle, maybe at DEF CON or at the Biohacking Village or at B-Sides. I think that these hacking events are a fantastic opportunity, like 8.8, for companies to connect with hackers directly. Now, of course, Tesla doesn't just go to a conference. They also have these prizes. These are the medals, the challenge coins that they give out to the hackers that find the top vulnerabilities in their products, in their cars, in their online services, in the software, in the firmware. Some people have called this the Hacker Olympics because of the knowledge that's required to understand all of these capabilities. In fact, I don't know, but I hope you might have some Tesla coin holders, the Tesla Challenge coin holders in Latin America and in Chile. So there's another organization that thought that these challenge coins are pretty cool, that they're a great idea, and it's called the Pentagon. The American Department of Defense launched the first of its kind Hack the Pentagon program back in 2016. When they first launched the program, until they received the first valid report of vulnerability, that means a known vulnerability or unknown vulnerability that was on a Pentagon website or system, it only took 13 minutes for somebody to report that. Just imagine how many months or years that vulnerability was up there, but nobody was aware of it. Nobody knew about it. So of course, the Pentagon also offers these challenge coins like Hack the Army, Hack the Air Force, Hack the Pentagon, I think Hack the Navy and Hack the Marines. But who are the people who respond to the invitation? They're not criminals. They're not bad guys. They're people like Jack Cable, who won all 3 of these coins in his senior year of high school, before turning 18. And for Jack, it has changed his life. Because of winning these challenge coins, he became a very famous, very well-known security professional. He received an internship with the Defense Digital Service. That means he actually went to work for the Department of Defense. And he was accepted to not just study, but also teach at Stanford. And nowadays, Jack is teaching at Stanford University in California, and he's teaching other hackers and other computer science kids about why friendly hackers make a difference. So he's actually become a role model, an example. And that's absolutely remarkable. Now, talking about role models, talking about examples, we're going to need more of them. So I want to briefly highlight the CTI League, which is an incredible initiative. It's called the Cyber Threat Intelligence League. It was started by volunteers. You can join it too. It was started in the beginning of the pandemic in March. And it's all about protecting hospitals from cyber criminals. So it's really specific to the healthcare industry, and they're helping them so much. Now, they were recently celebrated by the Security Analyst Summit. So these are the founders of the CTI League, and the Security Analyst Summit did this really cool joke. They called them like the Justice League. So they gave them the nickname, like they called this guy the Batman, they called this guy Superman, and they called this one Aquaman. But Ohad, Mark, and Nate, whether they are Batman, Superman, or Aquaman, they are really my heroes. And what's even funnier, if you don't like the Justice League, well, Wired actually called them the Cyber Avengers. So either it's Marvel Avengers, Marvel Universe Avengers, or DC Universe Justice League, any way you look at it, they're heroes. And we need more of those types of heroes and volunteer groups that are actually acting as the immune system. And we're going to need millions of security professionals out there in the world. All of the reports agree about this. Where are they going to come from? I don't think they're just going to come from universities and academic institutions. I think they will come from all walks of life, from all parts of the world. And I think that a lot of children growing up right now need to be a part of that global digital immune system. For example, in the United States, the Girl Scouts are learning about cybersecurity skills. That is absolutely amazing. I want to read just one quote about that from the head of the Girl Scouts organization. Her name is Sylvia Acevedo, and she says, "It was the confidence I developed as a young Girl Scout that gave me the courage to do something that not a lot of girls were doing at the time. In my case, it was engineering. For this generation of girls, it will be cybersecurity." So this is why it's so important to not just defend, not just be a part of an immune system. It's also important for us to create role models to showcase that being a friendly hacker, that being part of the cybersecurity industry is really being a hero for the future. So these are some of the kids, for example, that you might meet when you go to DEF CON. There are kids that go there with their parents because they believe being a hacker is a good idea for the future. And if you have kids at home, I hope you feel the same way. So I've given you quite a lot to think about today. Do you think it's time for us to keep calm and carry on and wait for all of this to kind of go over? I think it's time for us to adapt and to evolve. I think it's time to step up to a new reality. We have to take the red pill. We have to wake up to this new mindset and build a digital immune system together. It's made up of all of us, of you and me and the people who rely on us. We all have to be a part of it because it's not just about conquering COVID-19. It's about preparing for a very digital connected future. So I hope you decide to take the red pill. Wherever you are in the world, whether you're in Chile, in Santiago, or in Latin America, or in Europe, in the US, in Israel, in China, in the Far East, in Africa, in Antarctica, wherever you are, I hope you stay safe. And before we take some questions, I think we have time for one or two questions. I also want to make sure that I invite all of you. So I'm an optimist by nature. So I'm looking forward to blue skies ahead. And hopefully, I can meet you all at B-Sides Tel Aviv in Israel. This year, B-Sides Tel Aviv was in hybrid form. We called it Welcome to the New Normal. And we actually had a hybrid event. You can see the little mask on our logo there. And you can find all of the B-Sides Tel Aviv content on YouTube. But we're also part of something bigger. We are part of something called Tel Aviv Cyber Week. And Tel Aviv Cyber Week will celebrate its 10th anniversary, just like 8.8, this summer. So God willing, I hope that we have the opportunity to meet in person. And I would love to welcome you in sunny Tel Aviv. You can meet our Trojan Cyber Horse. These are the dates. And if we don't meet in person in Tel Aviv, I hope you decide to join us online. So that is my invitation. Bienvenidos a Tel Aviv. I hope to see you here. And with that, I think I will finish the presentation and I will get ready for answering maybe some of your questions. And of course, if you want to find me online, it's very easy, K3R3N3. That's my website, K3R3N3.com, or Twitter, K3R3N3. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I hope you have some fun questions for me. I'm going to stop the screen share now.
Thank you so much, Keren. You rock. It was a really great keynote. And there is a question. I have the first question, but before that, we have a video of you to explain why you are legend.
Oh, thank you.
Tenemos un video because I forgot at the beginning of the talk.
Okay,
tenemos
cool.
Un video de por qué Keren es una leyenda. Así que vamos con el video.
Gracias. Thank you.
Ok, bueno, ya lo saben todos por qué Keren fue la keynote de hoy día de 8.8 Leyendas Sandbox. Ya lo tienen súper claro. We have two questions, Keren. The first one is, there any international governmental initiative that allows the simple mortal to realize between a safe IoT and that is not so safe?
Great question. So yes, there are some government regulations and initiatives about IoT safety. One of them was started in California in the United States. And it's really incredible because California is now called as the first state that has like an IoT law. And according to the California state law, it's illegal to sell a device with a default username and password. So you have to change it. If they sell you an IoT device, and if you are a resident of California, they have to, you have to change the default password. In another initiative, I think in the state of Oregon, they want to make sure that there is continued update capability. So it's illegal to sell you an IoT device without update capability. Now, this might seem like, okay, California, Oregon, what does it matter to me? But actually it matters a lot because these are not just states where people live, it's also where a lot of technology companies are incorporated and they're making a big difference. So look out at the California regulations on IoT. There is a state bill on this. And in the UK, there's also going to be an initiative to give star rating, almost like you have a safety rating for a car. You will have a safety rating for an IoT device. I don't know if it's authorized because in the UK, the politics has been really chaotic even before Corona, but they did have this initiative on the table about a year or 2 years ago. Hopefully it will come out. And I think that the EU, the European Union, also has some guidelines on the cybersecurity of IoT devices. So it's a good thing that the governments and the regulators are paying attention, but we shouldn't wait for them. We are hackers. We need to make our own smart decisions and to educate the people that we live with when they bring in devices into their homes. We have to convince them that they need to protect their digital republic, right? This is what I look at. I look at my home and I see all of these devices. They're part of my family. I have to look after them. I have to update their firmware. I have to reset their passwords. I have to make sure that they are safe. This is what cyber hygiene should also be about, I think.
Thank you. Great. And the second question is, what are your thoughts on Israeli company that's selling search exploits to authoritarian governments?
That's a really good question. It's a tough one to answer. What are my personal thoughts? I'm not happy about it personally. I can't really stop it. I can't really do a lot about it myself, but I'm not happy about it. I can tell you that if I was offered to work for a company like this, I wouldn't take it. But this is my personal choice. I think this is something that's happening not just in Israel, unfortunately. We also have seen and heard about Italian companies, German companies, American companies. I think the Israeli companies are just maybe more in the headlights because they maybe make more noise, they are more well known, and because we are such a small country, but we have such a big cybersecurity ecosystem. It's really interesting for people to look at this example because it really kind of stands out. But Germany, Italy, US, UK, there are companies like this, I think, in other parts of the world as well. Personally, I'm not happy about it at all. I think that this market of offensive security capabilities is extremely problematic because you are asking a technology provider to make an ethical decision. Like, is this government okay or not? Are they going to use our tools in an ethical way or not? And it's super complicated. I'm not a ethics professor. I can only say what my feelings are about it, and I don't like it. That's my point of view. It's a complicated question. Do we have time for one more question, maybe?
Let me see. No, that is.
I have my question to you all. This is something to think about. And this is something I really believe in. I didn't talk about it in the presentation, but as we look towards the future of cybersecurity, as we consider building a digital immune system, I want you all to think about, can we take this moment in time for reset, to really change our assumptions about a lot of things? And, some of the assumptions, of course, I'm challenging is the assumption that all hackers are bad. Of course, I believe that hackers can be very helpful. But we also have a lot of older assumptions about cybersecurity. Let me give you one assumption that maybe it's time to reconsider: passwords. I think passwords belong in our past. They don't match our current reality. Passwords don't match the 21st century. We all have dozens of passwords that we need to memorize. It's no surprise that people are recycling the passwords. And really, passwords, it's just like bits of numbers and letters in the good case, uppercase, lowercase, whatever. They don't really represent a powerful authentication methodology anymore. So I'm not just talking about 2FA, like getting a text message to your phone. Okay, that's kind of the state of the art. But we actually have the capability, now that everybody is at home, maybe we can use different types of technologies to roll out maybe something better than passwords, a new type of authentication. And I'm a really big fan. There's a few companies that are working on this. There's a few initiatives that are working on this. If you heard about the term zero trust, passwords and going on a passwordless future, I think will fit into a zero trust future. And if you have in your company where you're working, if you have the position to make decisions, maybe think about, well, is there one service, one aspect of the company where we can go passwordless and instead use other mechanisms and methodologies for authentication? I think this is the road to the future. It's an opportunity to reset. Yeah. So this is what I want to recommend all of you, to think differently about the things we have done the same way ever, because life has changed. So now it's time for us to change some things.
Thank you so much. We are really happy that you did the keynote today, and I hope that you can visit the next year or the next to do a talk in person in Chile in 8@8.
I hope so too. Thank you so much. Gracias 8.8. Gracias a todos. And I wish you a fantastic conference. Don't forget the different villages, Biohacking Village, and the village, the Mujeres for the women. and you have a cyborg coming to speak with you. Such an exciting, fantastic conference. I hope to meet you in person. And Gabriel, I want to play in the Terminator arcade machine that you have behind you. It looks so cool. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hack the planet.
Hack the planet. Thank you, Chile. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.